You're listening to Nonprofits Now, the podcast brought to you by Three Valleys Community Foundation. I'm Dr. Kelly Bowers, and I am your host. For today's episode, we are featuring Impact Diablo Valley, the two co-founders, Gina Halow and Mindy Longo. We'll start with part one, speaking with Gina Halow. When we interview people for our podcast, we really want to find out all about your organization, Impact Diablo Valley, for so many wonderful things. We know it's doing incredible work in our community, but we also kind of want to know about the people behind it. And so now that we have our leadership here, we just want to hear kind of what makes you tick and what brings you to it, what inspires you, what keeps you going. So what's the first thing, get a little more personal here, that you do when you start your day?
Probably the first thing I do when I start my day is get up and get a cup of coffee.
There you go.
I've switched to decaf, but it's the first thing I need to do to get my day going.
Okay. And then does that work? Does it last all day, or do you go for a second cup later?
Oh, sometimes I need a second cup. Depends on what's ahead.
Are you an early bird?
No.
Okay.
No. I like to start my day around 7 a.m.
Okay. Well, so for some people, that is actually still early. So what has inspired you most as you look back at your life, either in work or life? Where do you pull your inspiration? Is there a special person or event? Or
I think I pull my inspiration from my family. I kind of grew up in a close-knit family. I'm still close with my parents and my siblings, and having two kids of my own, they're the reasons why I do the nonprofit work that I do and wanting to set a good example for them. And so my husband and I have created a family where our kids are what kind of drives the work that we're doing today.
And how old are they?
They are 10 and 12, fourth and sixth grade.
Oh, okay, great. And then are your parents, do they live close?
They do. They live 5 minutes from us, which is how we landed on moving back to Alamo.
Oh, that's wonderful. So what's one word that you would use to describe? You said you live in Alamo, but I'm sure you consider the whole Tri-Valley area and Contra Costa region part of our community. What's one word that you would use to describe our community?
Giving. I find that this is an incredibly giving community, and I feel so blessed and fortunate to live where we do and surround ourselves with like-minded people who want to kind of help those around us.
And I love that part of our mantra is give, grant, grow. And it is unbelievable how many people will step forward, with a lot of means, even with small means, but they just want to give of their heart. They want to give of their time. They want to give of their funding for good causes.
I think so. And providing them with opportunities, because I think we live in a very busy community as well. So people are on the run, but if you present them with opportunities, they definitely want to give back.
And that's kind of what's interesting is I think you give them a structure. You give them a mechanism so they don't have to start it from scratch. They can be part of something that's larger than them. So that's a gift that you're giving. If you had an extra hour a day, I know you're really busy and even you squeezed us in and we appreciate it, but if you had an extra hour in your day, how do you think you would spend it if you could have any discretion over it?
An extra hour in our day. Wow.
Wouldn't
That would be
gift?
such a gift to have an extra hour in the day. I think I would spend more time reading, catching up on current events, news, and having an uninterrupted hour to read and not feel like I'm cutting off other things that need attention.
Exactly. Yeah, so putting that first. And I don't know about you, but I have books that I've purchased that are still waiting to be read. Are they calling my name?
So one thing I do now is I listen to Audible because you can multitask, right?
Exactly.
You can
while you're
walk,
driving
drive, whatever. But I actually like the physical reading pages, which takes a little bit more uninterrupted time.
And I actually like the physical book even more than the ebooks. And so I've watched young kids and they'll start to go like they're scrolling on a book, and it's like, no, honey, you have to turn the page. I was like, oh my gosh, it's a lost art, turning the pages of the book. So, we're talking a little bit about that extra hour and maybe the recharging. And so what's your go-to way of recharging after a long week? You're so busy. You're doing so much. You're a mom and you've got this nonprofit and it's been at the height of everything, the holidays.
This time of year, prioritizing workouts are really important for me. And whether that's getting outside on a walk with a friend, that's probably the best way to fill my bucket. Otherwise, working out in some other way, whether it's a yoga class or at the gym, really helps.
That physical. And are you still multitasking even then?
I try to actually tune everything else out and just kind of focus on
what you're doing,
what I'm doing at that moment.
And they say that is the best way to actually completely recharge. So if you were to look back at your younger self, you're still young, but if you look back at your younger self, what piece of advice would you give that maybe you wish you had realized?
I would suggest focusing on what drives your happiness rather than focusing on what you think you should do. In college, I majored in accounting and finance, and that has provided me with a lot of opportunities. But if I was looking at my younger self, I would have said major in architecture or whatever it was that you're super passionate about. Because I think if you follow something that really drives your happiness, you're going to succeed at it.
Mm-hmm. There's actually some research from, I think it was out of Harvard, and it was called the Happiness Project. And there was this theory that successful people were happier, but actually they found that happier people tended to be more successful because they were doing just what you said. Mm-hmm. They were loving and living what they wanted to do most, and then other good things followed.
I think too often people are caught up, okay, well, this is what I should do next. This is where I should go, what I should do. But if you're focusing on kind of what truly drives you and makes you happy, I think in the long road, that's going to make you more successful.
And when you talk about being driven, I think the Impact Diablo Valley is definitely, from what I've seen firsthand, it's a passion project. It's something that is a really driving, motivating force. And it seems to be that by example and just by the synergy that you two create, you are getting more and more people to be involved. So how does that fit into this kind of drive and passion?
Impact Diablo Valley is absolutely a passion project. I feel very fortunate that we get to do this good work and helping inspire others to give and teach our children about giving back, and then helping those in need tenfold because of the power of this collective giving model. So this idea of doing what you love, it just feels like this isn't a job. It's a gift that I get to do this and bring our community together and teaching that, teaching our kids, the next generation, about giving back.
So the Giving Circle, I know it came from a larger model, but you're kind of doing it the Impact Diablo Valley way. Mm-hmm. What's different about the way you have created it?
So Impact 100 is a national organization focused on women's giving. And I first learned about it from my mother-in-law, who was part of a chapter up in Sonoma. And I liked the idea because we talk about busy people, right? Having a lot of good intentions, but they're just busy running life, work, kids, and they want to give back, but they don't know where, they don't know how. And Impact 100 provided a platform of well-vetted nonprofits in the local community and a way to give an impactful grant. I loved that concept, but I was thinking to myself, I would like to be a part of this, but something different has to, there has to be a different avenue for this. There has to be a way to include my kids. Mm-hmm. And so that's what's really unique and special about Impact Diablo Valley, is that we include our kids in every step of the way.
And that's definitely something that drew me to it. I couldn't help but gravitate to that concept. I've come from public education, mm-hmm. and we teach so many things to our kids. We try to instill certain things, but there's no textbook that's teaching them philanthropy and giving. That's mm-hmm. just not part of the normal standard curriculum. So tell me a little bit about how you involve kids and engage them, and then what kinds of lessons they're learning.
So philanthropy is about your time, your talent, and your treasure. And I think kids are often exposed to some ways of giving back of their time, whether it's some type of volunteer project through a Girl Scout troop or Boy Scouts. But we're not often talking to our children about the finance piece, about giving back. And so at Impact Diablo Valley, we talk to our children that giving back includes all those facets of giving. And as a family, we're coming together to give $1,000 towards an impact grant. And families get to that in a creative way, whether it's, writing a check being part of multi-generational, teaming up with your grandparents, or some families have even decided to have their kids participate, whether it's raising money through lemonade stands or having give, save, spend jars, and having their children help contribute to that $1,000 each year.
So they're learning the sacrifice. And
so they're learning what it means to give your money back towards those in need. And we have a symbolic way of representing that. Each year we host a children's event in October where the 3 finalists come and teach our kids what it means to give back, whether the kids are learning about being in foster care or what it means to have food insecurity or be unsheltered. And the kids bring $1 of their own money, listen to the presentations, and put it in the jar that they want to see win the impact grant. And the idea is that kids come to that presentation hearing about these 3 amazing finalists, voting on who their heart is tied to, and then they bring the conversation to their parents at the dinner table. And we really want to foster this philanthropy at the dinner table. So as a family, they can decide who gets that one vote, and parents come a couple weeks later to hear a more robust presentation. And as an organization, each family gets one vote towards the $100,000 impact grant winner.
And that's kind of that equity piece, I think, is that when you have, so you could very well in Alamo have one person give $100,000, but that's not the model, right? So no matter how much you have.
So one of the beauties of Impact Diablo Valley is it's an even playing field. So it's a way to bring philanthropy to the table where everybody has one equal voice, despite the amount of money. There are families that give over $1,000.
Oh, okay.
But one family, one vote. That's the model. And there's this beauty because you have maybe 50% of the families are seasoned philanthropists. They've written checks for greater than $1,000. But they believe in this model of collective giving. And then there's the other 50% where writing $1,000 is a significant amount of money. We call it a stop and think gift. You're not going to just hand over $1,000 unless you believe in the mission and the cause of the organization. And so we want families to feel connected to it. But for many, that might be the biggest check to a nonprofit they're writing for the year.
Or the only check.
Right. So there's this beauty of combining all types of philanthropy where everybody has an equal voice. Because together, when you come into a room and hear from the 3 finalists and you all vote on who is going to get the $100,000 grant, it's a really exciting, a really powerful night and a real sense of community.
And then initially, it was just females only, and then now they've added the children. What about, are there other spouses?
We're the only chapter in the country that's a family-oriented chapter.
Well, I think that's something to really, really share with people because that makes you very unique, and it's also, I think, draws in a larger sense of community when you're not excluding anyone.
So we reached out to Wendy Steele, who's the founder of Impact 100, and said, hey, I really love this idea that you have of gathering 100 people, giving $1,000 towards an impact grant. But can we kind of tweak this model and involve our children? And she was like, absolutely, run with it. And so that's when I approached Mindy and I was like, hey, I have this idea. My mother-in-law is part of this organization. I really like it, but would you be interested in, and so we started brainstorming. How can we involve the kids? Well, we have these like worksheets asking questions of kids and, okay, well, can we do a kids presentation and having this $1 voting model? And
so it's just kind of grown and evolved.
So we've evolved it over the last
awesome.
7 years.
So I'm sure people are going to be curious. I know I'm curious. I've known you only together. So what came first, the project, the friendship? I mean, how did this happen? Because sometimes when you're working really closely with people that in other avenues of your life, it doesn't always work. But I've just seen amazing synergy and excitement, enthusiasm, and impact.
So Mindy and I first met through a mutual friend who's also in the nonprofit world here in the local community. And we met at a few different events and we kind of had this natural connection. And I will never forget, we had talked about this concept of Impact Diablo Valley, but neither one of us was willing to like jump. And one night we were together with our husbands, and the subject came up, and our husbands were like, well, are you going to do this or not? And we looked at each other and we're like, yes, we're going to do it. And since then, I feel so blessed because a beautiful friendship has formed over the last 7 years. She's like my work wife. We have such synergy. It's great working together, and it's been really fun kind of collaborating and building impact.
So I didn't realize it's been 7 years. So we've worked with you for 2 years.
Spring of 2018.
Okay,
so that's coming up on our...
So your kids were little then?
Little, yeah.
So that's amazing. And I'm glad then that you just jumped in, because now more people, you have a larger board too, or is it just the two of you?
No, we have 8 other people on our board is 10 other people plus the 2 of us.
Okay. Great. Yeah, you were just doing incredible work. And when I think about $100,000, that is not chump change. That's something that actually will make an impact, especially for some of our smaller nonprofits.
So the idea is individually you can make a small difference, but together you can make a real powerful change in the lives of people in need. And sure, we can write $1,000 checks, but I can't write $100,000 checks to local nonprofits. But that's a real gift for those organizations, because they're able to accomplish something that they wouldn't even if they got those collective $1,000 checks, because our impact grants are not for the bottom line, but they're for specific projects that allow these nonprofits to stop and think, hey, what can we do with $100,000? What program could we grow? What capital expenditure, infrastructure change could we make? So they've been pretty exciting to see the types of, projects and
the goal was 100,000, but then you've surpassed that, right? So then you have extra funding, and where does that go?
So last year we hit a record $154,000 for the year.
Okay, I think we need to say that one again. How much was it?
We raised $154,000 last year.
That is phenomenal.
And so we give the $100,000 impact grant, and the runners up each get $25,000. And then the $4,000, this is a new exciting thing. This was our second year of doing. We have a teen advisory board. So we talk about bringing philanthropy to the dinner table and raising our kids. We started a teen advisory board where kids in high school can help us with the leadership of impact and running our events. And then we started a teen grant where we have $4,000 allocated for them to review a few of the grant applications that came in for the year, and they get to vote on a $4,000 grant this year. Okay. So that really fits our mission of the teens learning what it means to look at a grant, review a grant, and what type of projects nonprofits are applying for. So that's an exciting addition that we have.
These are the future Gina and Mindy's in the making, it sounds like. So that is really, and you find that that the teens go, do they struggle with it, or are they aware of the nonprofits? I mean, they do the research. How do they come up with their favorites?
So last year we gave them $1,000 grant, and we had, so we have about 25 applications come in each year. And as I've mentioned, 3 of them move forward to our finalists. So last year we gave the teens 3 applications that we had done site visits with, but didn't get moved forward to the top 3. So that's how they.
So they're already vetted, but then they have a good
they're all vetted, and we have a pretty rigorous vetting process. And then the teens read these applications, and it was interesting to sit with them and hear what they had to say. And they definitely have opinions on what type of organizations they want to fund.
Right, that's amazing. So, when you look back, what's kind of the root of any successful partnership? Do you work with any other organizations, or are you really a standalone? It sounds like that the national organization. Is there any partnership that you really value or rely on?
Well, Three Valleys Community Foundation.
Oh, I didn't even think. Okay, that was as a softball, I guess. Thank you.
No, that absolutely is an important partnership for us. So Mindy and I are running this organization completely. We're volunteers. We're doing this as a passion project. And for us to do this, having a community foundation that kind of believes in our mission, is a partner, and helps us with handling the finances. But having Three Valleys assistance in putting together the grant agreements, helping us with our finances, and just being a partner that we could rely on and ask questions, that's been a huge part of making us feel comfortable in running our own organization, is having the partner behind the scenes in Three Valleys Community Foundation.
And we want to even do more. We would love to, and that's part of the podcast, is we want to elevate and amplify what you're doing, because I don't think people realize always, especially in, some people might understand the concept of a giving circle, but to know that it's happening right here in our own region and the incredible impact it's making is exciting.
So I read an article last year. I can't quote the source right now, but giving circles are one of the fastest growing ways of giving back. And I believe that to be true. I think it's such a powerful way to give, is when you come together and you can give in a significant way. That's such an incredible gift to local nonprofits that aren't always receiving those large dollar grants.
Right. And then also you're part of something larger than life. And so that's really exciting. So do you have advice for donors or community members who might want to join? Do you have to live in Alamo, or, do you have to have a certain amount of money? And what's the time frame? How do you get involved?
So we donate to nonprofits in the Contra Costa community. Anybody can be part of Impact Diablo Valley. We have people that live in other counties just because they know us and believe in our mission. But if you believe in this power of collective giving, we love you to be part of our group and our time frame. So we set this up where we are raising money up until May 1st. And at May 1st, we cut off that year's donation pool. And the reason behind that is we want to give nonprofits a chance to hear how much money we raised. So if it's $154,000, hopefully it's more in 2025. So the reason behind the May 1st deadline is so that nonprofits can hear how much money we've raised. And at the end of May, we have a nonprofit workshop where we announce our total grant raised. And they have about 6 to 8 weeks to submit their applications. So hopefully we've raised at least $100,000 for that impact grant. And then the remainder is divided up between community grants and now our teen grant.
Okay.
And then we have the summer months for them to apply. And anybody who's part of Impact can be on our grants committee. So we kicked that process off in August. We had about 15 people on it. And we have a pretty rigorous process in looking at applications. We look at 3 years of finances, want to make sure they have a sound financial stability. We have probably a 7-page application looking at the overall organization's strength, and then they apply for the specific impact project. And so our grants committee uses a rubric system grading it. And we get together and we have kind of a point system where the strong applications rise to the top, the bottom ones kind of fall toward the bottom, and there's middle ones that are up for discussion.
That's when you have that opening discussion.
And it's an awesome conversation. It's great to get different perspective. And then we move certain amount forward where we do site visits and get to know the teams behind these organizations before we then move 3 forward to the entire membership.
And once you give the money, do they share what they're doing? Do they share data, statistics? Or do you feel part of it?
Yeah. So the nonprofits present to our organization, the kids in October and the adults in November. And we don't just hand out $100,000. We have a grant agreement where we need to work together to determine how many different payments will there be throughout the year. And then we ask for them to provide us quarterly reports, whatever makes sense for the project.
So they have some milestones and things to just show.
We want to understand what's the long-term impact. So we set up with the grant winner a grant agreement, and they get a few checks throughout the year, and then they report back to us. Have they hit their milestones? What type of impact are they making? And what's really awesome is when they come back 1 year later at our November event and tell our community what that $100,000 meant to
their
them.
success stories. So that's inspiring others to come forward. And then people see that probably motivates donors to want to give again.
We also have a spring event where it's an opportunity for us to invite new people, hopefully recruit some new faces. And we've had prior donors come speak at that. And hearing those success stories and how $100,000 has really benefited their organization, that's great recruiting for
I can imagine.
Impact.
Yes, exactly. So if you had, if you were able to look ahead to the future of Impact Diablo Valley, you've had, it's 7 years and you've come so far, and now you're adding different options and different programs. What's next?
What's next? Mindy and I have taken this year by year. I think my dream would get to be to raise a $200,000 in one year and be able to give out multiple community grants. But really, I'd love to help other communities start Impact Diablo Valley chapters in their own community.
So are there any other in this area then?
We're the only family chapter, as I said.
So
but I just
amazing.
think this idea of giving and having your kids involved is such a powerful, unique model of giving. I'd love to see other communities do that with their children as well.
No, I agree. I think it's really valuable. And people do wonder, they say, what's going to happen in the future, when people, how do we get young people to come to this understanding? And I'm thinking about some of the high schools. When I was growing up, they had in homecoming and things like that, people just won like the class that had most spirit. And now, to your point about growing the next generation of philanthropists, now sometimes for homecoming, that whichever class has the most spirit gives funding toward a cause. And now with social media and with so much global awareness, a lot of young people are very aware of the challenges that our society is facing. So it kind of gives them, it's kind of empowering for them to, instead of just looking back and saying, oh, I have to wait till I grow up to do something, I can actually just do something now.
Young people have a voice. They're able to make changes from early on.
Yeah, that's really, really exciting. So as we look back on all of your gifts and giving that you've done, is there any one particular nonprofit that just really touched your heart, or the project or anything that stood out, or are they just all really special in their own way?
All 7 grants we've given have been extremely special in their own way. However, one that stands out to me is Youth Homes. So they applied. Youth Homes is an organization that supports foster kids in the area, and their grant proposal was for capital expenditure. They wanted to remodel a home that was in great distress. It wasn't a safe, healthy environment. And they're taking in the most at-risk teens and to think about those foster teens that are living in a house that is falling apart, unsafe. It breaks your heart because these kids have no family to fall back on. And so what is that modeling to them when they're living in a home that's less than? So $100,000 allowed them to bring the home up to code. It allowed them to renovate the home, create a beautiful, safe, and happy environment for these teens. And so when you're surrounded by a safe, nice, warm space, how can you not help but feel a little bit better? And it was a great, great project because people in the Lafayette community rallied around kind of giving them bids that were at cost. $100,000 really went further.
Okay, yeah.
And so we felt really good about funding that project. And that spring, we do family service days in the spring to kind of wrap the whole grant cycle with our kids. So we went and did a spring cleanup at the house, and we picked weeds and we did mulch. The kids planted some new plants in the front. And so we got to really kind of see this whole house look like a home.
Right.
And it looks like an inviting place where these teens would want to come. And if you think about foster teens, they don't have a home to go to year after year for the holidays. And so cleaning this home up, having a beautiful kitchen, safe, clean space, those teens are invited for years to come back. And I hope that helps them have a path for success in
and they always
their
have that
future.
Home base
that
and feel
home
cared
base.
for. And I know when I read about Impact Diablo Valley, one of the words that always sticks with me is the transformative part. It's about transformation, and that big jump of funding can do that. But also, it had to be really wonderful to see actually the tangible transformation. That's sometimes when you give, you don't really know exactly where the funding goes. But when you did something like that, and then everyone came and the families came too, you're actually seeing the before and after. So that's
another great thing I love about Impact Diablo Valley is we're not just funding to the bottom line, and you don't know where that money's going. You know exactly what type of projects and things are being implemented with that $100,000. So you feel really good, and you feel part of the process when you see what has happened.
That's amazing. So we're going to be wrapping up soon, but how could someone learn more or become involved? And then finally, just what last words do you just want to share? Something that maybe we didn't touch on that you just think, what would everyone want to know? What would you want to impress upon them about Impact Diablo Valley?
Well, I'd love for people to reach out and learn more. You can find us on Instagram. You can reach out to us via email. Mindy and I are happy to sit down with anybody and go on a walk or have a cup of coffee and explain our model of giving, and would love to have others join us on this mission of raising our next generation of philanthropists and giving significant grants to the local community.
So one thing that I know, because I've been part of your some of your informational webinars about grant making, is that you do things a little differently, and that your funding can be used in different ways that makes it even more appealing for a nonprofit. So tell me a little more about that.
Sure. One thing I've learned in this giving process is even if organizations have enough funding or more than enough funding for the year, those funding buckets are restricted from the government grants that they get or other individual grants that they get. And so if a capital project is needed, they have to seek new funding. And that's where we come in, is because we are open to looking at all different types of projects. We're not limited to the types of projects we're funding. And another example of kind of different types of funding is new projects. We've learned that not everyone is willing to fund a new project. So they come to us. We kind of consider ourselves like angel investors.
A little incubator.
Mm-hmm. Our very first grant was White Pony Express in 2018. And they came to us with this idea of a school pantry program. Their thesis was that kids that are on the free lunch program at schools aren't going to perform as well when the only reliable meal they get a day is lunch. And of course that makes sense. So they wanted to open a school pantry where families could come in and get groceries for the week so that they would have breakfast, lunch, and dinner for their families. And our grant was able to fund the opening of 3 school pantries in Contra Costa County. And what happened with that was kids performed better at school. They had better behavior because they weren't hungry and acting out.
Their basic needs are met, so they're able to.
Exactly. And so because we were willing to be that angel investor and the results proved, other organizations started to fund that type of school pantry. And today they now have 14 school pantries open.
Well, that is phenomenal growth. And that's also a tribute and a testament to what you did, kind of, in a way, maybe taking a risk on something that wasn't the tried and true. A lot of times they'll say in the grant applications, you have to show a best practice, tried and true method. But you were able to see the potential of something that could happen.
Exactly, right? So we
kind
of able to lift them up, and it ended up working out.
Yeah, I think about the work that you do, and I think it's not only a gift, it's actually an investment in the potential of the nonprofit to do the good work and make the impact.
One thing I didn't realize when we were starting Impact, I kind of thought it was just going to be that grant that we gave out. But there's really been this ripple effect in giving because we have people come together at the kids event and then at the adults event, and they're learning about organizations they didn't necessarily know before coming. And if there's an organization that didn't win, that maybe that pulled on their heartstring, people are going and giving additional funds to that organization.
So it's not their only chance.
So it's not their only chance.
It's on the radar.
There's just like a ripple effect.
Okay.
There's been a few members that are tied to corporations where they've started corporate giving for these nonprofits.
Oh, that's really
And so
exciting.
this beautiful effect of community giving. And when I kind of said our community is such a giving community, it's blown my mind to see what people can do to help those in need.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. I think that's a wrap. Is there anything that unless there's something is there anything else you want to add or anything? I think we covered a lot.
No, I think just this model of collective giving, I really believe in it. I think it's such a powerful way to give back when you kind of pull the people in your circle, and together you can make a larger difference when you come together than if you were to work individually. So thank you, Kelly.
Oh, thank you. This was fun. This is joyful. Mm-hmm.
It's joyful for me too. So I love spreading the mission of impact, and we can talk about it all day long.
And now for part 2, we'll be speaking with Mindy Longo. So welcome to our podcast, Nonprofits Now for Three Valleys Community Foundation. We're really excited to have you here with us today. And so we're going to start with kind of rapid fire questions. And so just whatever comes to, people are really curious. They want to know the person behind Impact Diablo Valley, the people who are the leaders, and just a little bit about you and what makes you tick and what inspires you. So we're just going to get a little bit behind the scenes. So what's the thing that you do when you start your day, the first thing?
I mean, the very first thing is I carve out a little bit of me time. So I wake up before anybody else in my house. I have a cup of coffee and I just kind of relax for 10 minutes because waking up is always a little harder for me.
Oh, okay. So are you kind of a night person?
I am.
Okay, so a little night owl. But then you center yourself. That's probably why we exchange emails and all hours, I think. So, and who has inspired you most in your work or life or both?
I could answer this question a lot of ways, but I am going to actually talk about an event. And when I was a student at Penn State University, they have the largest student-run philanthropy actually in the world.
Wow.
And they raise millions of dollars every year. The students of the university raise millions of dollars every year for kids with cancer. And it's a very unique event to be a part of. And I was a part of it for 4 years when I was a student there. And it really did change my life. It changed my outlook. And it was the single most inspiring event of the year for all of us. And I was directly linked to families that had kids with cancer. And that's part of what they do. They hook up each organization that's part of the event with a family that is actually going through treatment through the money that is being raised. And the kids that you meet along the way, the resilience, the strength that they have is truly unbelievably inspiring to see that they're fighting cancer and they're still lively and vibrant and wonderful little humans.
That is amazing. And you hear about college and most people think about, parties and sororities and fraternities and football games. And to hear that is a big takeaway that has impacted the rest of your life is pretty amazing.
Absolutely. And I think it's really an amazing part of that school and the environment that school has created, because I'm not the only person that would list that as their favorite memory from Penn State. Incredible. I mean, you would say football games because it is really fun to go to the football games, but really the thing that was the most inspiring and so incredible to be a part of was the Penn State Dance Marathon that they did every single year.
That's amazing. Well, thank you for sharing because I hadn't heard about it, but now I definitely want to Google and find out more.
Yeah.
What's one word that you would use to describe our community?
Generous. I mean, that's part of why we started Impact, is because we were really looking around at this community of families that wanted to give more and wanted to give back because of the generous nature of who they are and just had no idea how to do it. They didn't know where to start.
So you gave them that opportunity. What local resources or place make you most proud of our region?
I mean, I think that it touches on what I just answered for the last one, which is the power of generosity. We live in such an affluent area, and people really do want to give back. And it's unique. It is a unique opportunity. And with something like Impact or Three Valleys, where you can come together as a community and give back, I think it's that much more powerful.
And that's kind of the other flip side. When people know there's affluence in an area and that a lot of people are very successful financially with means, sometimes they forget that there are others who are kind of struggling to get by. So how do you balance that out?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that that's part of what the people that are part of our organization, our members and families, they really want to learn about what's happening in our community. And that's why we help teach them. Here are the needs, food insecurity is growing year over year. There are more homeless individuals and families year over year. They want to know what's happening, and they want to be a part of the solution. They want to be a part of how do we make it better, because we are really all in this together. Even if your immediate community is affluent and doing well, we really as an entire county, Contra Costa County, we need to be looking out for each other. And so I think our family and our members really understand that, and they look to us to help educate them on kind of the state of affairs in the area.
And then in that way, you're leading by example, too, because you are the first to contribute, and then you get others to be inspired to follow along.
We try, right? And I think it's really a passion project for Gina and I, and that's why we started it. It's about learning about these incredible local nonprofits, and then how do we bolster them up and foster and support the work that they're already doing.
Thank you. If you had one extra hour in any given day, how would you spend it? Or maybe even today?
Oh my goodness.
'Cause you are a busy person. I know that from experience firsthand.
How would I spend it? I maybe would try, as many of us are, I have young kids. I'm in a very busy season of life. So I would maybe try to carve out a little bit more time for myself. And then maybe pick up some of the things that I am passionate about. I could volunteer for other organizations more. I love to read. So I would read books that are sitting on my nightstand that I read 5 pages a night and then I fall asleep. Exactly. So those are things, maybe work out a little more, just things that I enjoy for myself, because it is very much a giving season right now with my young kids and my family.
Doing a lot for others, and so every once in a while there's that little bit of balance and just rejuvenation, little self-care, which is not selfish. It's self-care.
Self-care.
Mm-hmm. So looking back, and you talked a little bit about your college experience, what's a piece of advice that you would have given your younger self at any stage, not college or even any other stage?
I think the biggest piece of advice I would give myself is not to worry so much and to maybe enjoy it a little more, because I've always been driven and I always knew in my gut some of my passions, like nonprofit work. I was also very career oriented when I worked in my kind of corporate career life, and I definitely allowed some of that stress to get to me. And I think I always came back to what was important to me. And I think just trusting that gut instinct and trying to stress a little less and just enjoy it more. When you're young, you don't know that. You're just trying to create your life.
And you're looking ahead for that next
you're
thing.
Looking ahead. You're trying to do right by your values and what you want to accomplish in your time that you have. And I think I stressed a little more than I should have. I mean, especially now that I'm in my 40s and able to really see a much bigger picture of how all the pieces have really truly fallen into place.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people think about that as just sometimes to be present in the moment.
Exactly.
And kind of take it in, and it's okay to enjoy. It seems a little indulgent, but it actually is a way to find and carve out the joy of so many things that are happening.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And every phase of your career, your life, your nonprofit work, everything that you're building towards really does start to all come together as you gain insight and wisdom into what you're doing. So,
Thank you. So we talked a little bit about recharging. And so is there, after a really long week or a stressful season, or maybe after you just give away a lot of funding and you run this big Impact Diablo Valley campaign, how do you recharge?
I do work out, and I do love to go on walks, especially outside. So I think just walking, getting a little bit of time for that physical outlet is really important to me. I definitely try to carve that out as much as I can when I can. And then spending time with people that you love is always recharging.
Yeah. And when you decompress or when you walk, are you multitasking then? Are you on the phone, listening to podcasts, listening to this podcast?
I'm always multitasking. Okay. So I'm listening to podcasts. I'll definitely listen to this one. I might be taking some phone calls. I definitely feel like there's several things that are going on as I'm walking, but you're outside and you're, able to really just kind of take in the fresh air, and everything feels better when you're kind of out walking and getting things done at the same time.
Of course. Other than your own nonprofit that you run so well, and can you name a local nonprofit or an individual whose work you admire in the philanthropic space?
I am going to name two. Our very first impact grant recipient was an organization called White Pony Express. And first, I have to say, there are so many incredible local nonprofits you can give to here. We are blessed with really intelligent, motivated, hardworking people in our community that have really started some fantastic organizations. White Pony Express stands out because they started, I think they had started 4 or 5 years before they received our very first impact grant. And what struck me in getting to know them as an organization is how they had a very simple idea of food should not be wasted. It should be distributed to all those in need. And it became this efficient, smart, helpful organization that kept food out of landfills, that put food on the table of people that need it. And they grew so quickly and so efficiently and so inspiringly, so it was so fast and it was so smart. And the idea in and of itself was such a great idea. We should not be throwing food in our landfills. Mm-hmm. There are some empty bellies and they're right here in our community. So we need to help them out. So that's the first organization I would.
And when I hear those adjectives, wouldn't everybody want to be described as efficient, smart, helpful, and generous? I mean, that's great. And for an organization to be doing that, that's pretty phenomenal.
It's just such an incredible model. And I really admire the work that they did and how quickly they grew. The second organization is an organization called Make It Home. And they help provide furniture to foster youth aging out of the system, to homeless families, veterans, etc. So anybody that is coming out of homelessness, they help actually furnish these homes. And they're another organization that started actually in COVID. Oh. And they now are serving all of the major Bay Area counties, and they can turn a request for a home into a fully furnished home in 7 days by repurposing donated furniture and keeping all of that furniture out of landfill. So again, it's this organization that saw a need that nobody else was really fulfilling, and they are not only attacking it head on, they have built it quickly, smartly. They work with social agencies all over. So it's just this incredible growth that has happened in such a short period of time. And on top of it, they turn a fully furnished home around in 7 days.
Wow, that is phenomenal. And when you talk about growth, a lot of that growth is probably due to the support of Impact Diablo Valley, because an impact grant, I mean, we give out grants and there's a wide range of the amounts. But being your fiscal sponsor, we're able to see you in action and how you're funding in such a large amount, especially for a smaller nonprofit or a growing, emerging one. That's an enormous impact. It is. It's a lot of money.
Yeah. And so, I mean, just to take Make It Home as an example, they are our latest recipient for a $100,000 grant. And what they're able to accomplish with that grant is they're going to furnish 62 homes in Contra Costa County. And this is an area Contra Costa County specifically is an area they're trying to grow. So they're going to double the number of furnished homes with our grant size. And really, it's about getting the word out. So many of these nonprofits that we work with, especially when they're small, they have no marketing budget. They have no advertising budgets. They are using every dollar efficiently to serve the people that they are helping in the community. And so this $100,000 impact grant, not only is it going to help furnish so many homes for people that are coming out of homelessness in Contra Costa County, but it spreads the word about the work that Make It Home is doing so that they can continue to grow in Contra Costa County. They can help even more homeless families, even more foster age youth transitioning out of the system. So that kind of grant really is about spreading the word of the work. Yes, it's going to provide these furnishings, but there is such an exponential growth that can happen for the organization because of that grant as well.
So many people that are involved with your group are already hearing about it. Those who are involved with our group or our organization are hearing about it. And now the podcast can also sing the praises of groups that are doing this type of incredible work.
And that's the thing about the transformational grants that we put together. What we have learned is, granting from a lot of different places, government grants that are received, there's just so many restrictions that come with a lot of grants. And our organization doesn't do that. We really want to fund a need that you can't fund anywhere else. We want to fund new projects. We want to fund a new idea. We want to fund growth. We want to fund something that is really going to move the needle in helping solve a problem in Contra Costa County and really help people either get back on their feet or find a new job or gain new skills or have a new home. These are really this is why we do what we do. These transformational grants really do help provide initial funding that local nonprofits just can't get anywhere else.
Yeah, that capacity building and actually the sky's the limit. And I love how you use the word transformational because some people think of giving as more transactional, and so you bring in funds, you give them out. But when you talk about transformation, there's just something more exciting and inviting about that idea. And I think that when the donors that I know who are involved with your group, they embrace it and they want to be part of something that's larger than them and to really see that impact that will continue on beyond.
Exactly. I mean, I think that that's the power of collective giving. And I think the trend of collective giving is going to continue to grow as it has because, we all have a certain amount of dollars that we can give. And local nonprofits absolutely need those dollars for their day-to-day operations. But when you pool your resources and you collectively give, I personally can't write a check for $100,000 to an organization. That is outside of my budget. As much as I would love to.
You and me both.
It's outside of my budget. But when you pool your funds in a way like this, you are able to really make an impact and to fund something that is truly different and transformational for the organization or for the community. And that really is at the very heart of collective giving. It really is about how do we all work together to accomplish something that's bigger than ourselves, that's bigger for the organization, that's bigger in the community.
So when you go out and about and try to get donors or tell people about what you're doing and try to get them to be part of the collective giving process, how do you connect with them?
I think Gina and I have always said we're just going to tell our story. And there's a million ways to give. There's a million ways to give back. You can give, your time, you can give your talent, and you can give your funding, your financial situation, right? And just money. And so we are very clear about the giving model that we are creating, right? We are creating an opportunity where you can contribute $1,000 that builds this $100,000 transformational grant. And it really is about the funding piece. And if you want to be a part of what it would look like to fund a large transformational grant for these local organizations. And we tell our story, and it's as simple as that. And I think it resonates with a lot of people, especially in our community, because they are so generous. And time is also precious and very hard to find. So I think the model also resonates with people, and our story resonates with people because especially families, young families, they maybe time is not on their side and volunteering is not in the cards right now for them. And so they look to something like this that is a very small time commitment, but you can still make a really big impact with the dollars that you give.
And for you, since you are also a nonprofit under a fiscal sponsorship, how do you support your work? I mean, I think in the beginning, a lot of it was just also personally giving.
We are operationally, we are very, very lean in terms of the money, the dollars.
And I can
that
attest
we
to that.
We believe that 100% of the $1,000 goes directly to the organizations that need it and goes into those transformational grants. So we had a few key donors that would give money every year to help cover things like your website cost and your PO box and a few events. We have some very generous organizations like CPC in Danville that have allowed us to use their space without charging us any money, which has been incredible.
That is really nice.
Their support has meant so much. And so, we've really leaned on, again, that generosity of our community to help keep the dollars, that $1,000, going directly to the organizations and the people that need it the most.
That makes sense. And it's nice to see that other organizations are also putting their confidence and faith and support to make your group work on behalf of others. That's nice. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so this is kind of a summary statement. And if you could sum up your whole life's mission or this mission in one sentence, what would it be?
I think I would say when we come together, we can accomplish so much more than when we try to do things individually. And when we work as a generous community, we really are unstoppable. And I would be remiss to not mention that part of our mission is really to teach our families and our children about giving back as well. So while we come together as a community and we raise these transformational grants, we also invite our kids and give our kids opportunities to learn about what it means to give back and what these needs are within the community that we are helping to create a solution for.
And I will tell you that's one of the, key factors and elements of what you do that has inspired me, because I, was from education world and there's so many things that we try to teach kids, reading and writing and arithmetic, now and technology and social media and how to navigate the world and other languages. But how beautiful to teach them how to have a giving heart and how to put that in practice and how to grow those skills. It's not really taught from a textbook, so they're learning it firsthand from you.
Absolutely. And I think, kids are so curious about everything. And planting seeds when they're young, I think, is so important. And I grew up in a very philanthropic house. My parents were wonderful. But I never knew what they did financially to support organizations and the community. I knew what they donated in terms of their time and talent. And they did a lot of all of it. But finances were kind of like a hush-hush when I was growing up. And it wasn't as talked about. And I think it should be a part of the conversation. Kids understand it. Kids know it. Kids know they get an allowance or they have savings. And really planting that seed that if and when you are able financially to give back, you should look for the organizations around you that you connect with. Look for opportunities to collectively give so you can make that bigger impact. But it really is about planting that seed of if you can do it, you really need to as part of being like a responsible, giving, charitable adult.
And I hadn't thought about that, but I know that from, I remember I was in the Catholic Church, and people had these little envelopes, but you don't know what's in it. People just putting it in. And so it was a mystery. And you didn't really know. Maybe it's for privacy, but at the same time, if you illuminate that, then people can understand, what is actually going on. And so how young is too young, or what age do you start with?
We take anybody and everybody. We really do. And so, I think I started this organization with a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old. And so, I think And Gina's youngest son was 3 when
Oh,
we
so
started.
little.
And so we have babies that come to our children's events. And I think it's never too early. And again, you don't have to talk about the amount of money, to your point about that envelope and kind of keeping it sealed. I think it's about, if you have a few extra dollars and you can give back, you should. You should be giving to organizations to help them further their mission and continue to do great work in the community.
And that's the gift that keeps on giving.
Exactly.
Through the kids of the next generation. Well, thank you. Not everyone's familiar with the giving circle concept and the model, and you sort of touched upon it. But if you could describe exactly how it works and what your expectations were and how you've surpassed them.
So Impact Diablo Valley is actually based on a national organization called Impact 100. And the model that Wendy Steele, the founder of Impact 100, created is you bring 100 women together, each donating $1,000, and it would create a $100,000 impact grant. When we created our chapter of the organization, we both had young kids at the time. And so the Women's Giving Circle is an incredible way to give back, and it brings women together and empowers women to make these decisions. But we really wanted to include our children. And so we had talked early on with Wendy, the founder, and we just said, could we do a family chapter and include our husbands and our small children and teach them about giving back along the way? So Impact Diablo Valley's mission was created in, really, it's 2 parts. We bring 100 families together to create the $100,000 impact grant, and we do that year over year. And at the same time, we teach our children about what it means to give back.
And then you also include the rest of the family, right?
And we include everybody. So everybody is welcome to basically all of our events. And we have specific ways that we encourage and teach the children, that we encourage and have the spouses of the family come in and learn and vote and really learn about our organization and all the organizations that we're trying to fund.
And I know, since we're the fiscal sponsor at Three Valleys Community Foundation, that you've actually gone beyond the 100,000. So how does that happen? Do people give more, or do more people give?
So we are up to just about 130 families, and we do have members that give more than the $1,000. So the $1,000 is reached in a lot of ways. We have families, we call it generational giving. Like grandparents would donate $500, and then a kid, their kid would donate $500, and together they would create one family that's part of our membership. We also have corporate matching, so you can donate $500 with a $500 corporate match. We have quite a few, to answer your question about how we get to that 154,000 that we got to this year with 130 members. We have quite a few members that corporate match their $1,000.
So you're doubling it.
So they're doubling their donation. And I think that as we've grown, we've seen more and more members give more. And I think it's really a testament to the belief in how this works and the belief of collective giving. And again, funding those transformational sized grants.
So when you get beyond the 100,000, where does that money go?
We have created what we call community grants. And in our process, when you apply for our grants, we basically have a process where we evaluate the applications and the impact projects that they're applying for. And we have a committee that helps go through all of that with us. And we land on 3 organizations, essentially, that we teach every single family in our organization about. These 3 organizations, at that point, they receive funding, whether it's a community grant. So this year, both of our community grants were $25,000 each.
Which is still quite a lot.
Which is a lot of money. And we're really proud of that, because at that point, we have 3 incredible organizations, and we wish we had $300,000 checks we could cut every year, but we're not there yet. And then we have our one big impact grant with a $100,000 grant. One thing that is new this year is, well, actually we started it last year, but this year we are allowing our teen board. So we have a teen board, which is made up of high school students, and they're really leaders in our organization, and they help us run some of our events. They help do volunteer and service hours. They learn about what it means to be a grant maker and how that process looks. And so the teens are going to give a $4,000 teen grant in the spring, and this will be the second year that they're going to be giving a grant.
So they're really experiencing in parallel the entire process.
Absolutely. And it's such a unique and great experience for them because they're actually reading the applications. They're thinking about it the same way that we do as a committee. And they're learning about grant making all along the way and kind of how do you look at these organizations and what projects would you want to fund and how do you make those determinations?
Now, do they give to the same organization or could they give to any?
They give to an organization that it has applied in the process over the summer. And they have had they have been a part of our process to a certain extent. So it's not necessarily
so it's
the
not
three.
A separate process, but
it's
it wouldn't
not
be one.
Yes.
Okay.
It's not a separate process, but it is organizations that we are familiar with, that we have relationships with, and that we've engaged in conversations with.
Do you find that the teens, it sounds like it's just the second year, but do you find that they are focused on maybe youth-focused nonprofits, or is there a no pattern?
It's so funny that you asked that. So we only have 1 year of experience, but I do think, the very first teen grant, they gave $1,000 to Teen Esteem. And it is an organization that they know and that is in their school, that is present. And I actually do think that they've so far they emotionally are, they
kind of gravitate toward that, I think.
Thank you. I'm like, they gravitate towards those organizations because they're teens, and that's very much relevant in their world.
And Teen Esteem's done amazing work. I know Three Valleys has granted about $20,000 to them because, and they are throughout the Tri-Valley, which is our entire region, and it's amazing. I've seen that from both ends, so great.
Yes.
And we're all kind of in sync on that.
Yes.
So you vet the nonprofits, and they go
do.
through a process, and so that's also something that I think people can rely on. The donors know that you're not just handing out money willy-nilly.
Exactly. So part of our application process, we have them do a pretty standard application that I think a lot of organizations do when they're doing any kind of grant funding, grant making. But we do have a rubric system, and we read the applications, and then we apply a score to this rubric system that we've created. And we're very open about what that looks like. So we do have a grant workshop for any nonprofits that want to come and just kind of understand more about the actual process. And we do that in either the end of May or beginning of June every single year. And it really is about being transparent. We're here to make every application really strong. We're here to have make our jobs hard, have those impact proposals come in so that they're really strong. And then we have a grants committee. It's all volunteers and it's all members of our organization. And it's anywhere from 15 to 20 people every year. Amazing. And they read every single application and they think about all the different things that organization has proposed. And then once we go through that process, we also have a financial piece, and we look at financial statements from the past 3 years that an organization has been around and just make sure, hey, it's $100,000. Do they need the money? And if they get the money, can they use it efficiently and towards their impact project and actually able to carry that out? And so we go through that process, and then we land usually anywhere from 6 to 8 organizations that we take into what we call site visits. And we do a deeper dive. It's about an hour-long Zoom call with the organizations, and we just get to know them even more. And that is how we land through that process. The grants committee is also on all of those calls, and then we have discussions, and then we land with our 3 organizations that we are looking to introduce to our entire membership.
But even to be in the top 6 or so is quite, a nice accolade, I'm sure. And then
Absolutely.
if they aren't selected this year, could they apply in the future too?
You can apply every single year. Okay. And so, I talk about like my own personal long-term goal is I would love to give either an impact grant or a community grant to, tons of different nonprofits in this area, because there are so many incredible nonprofits doing so many incredible work. So if Impact Diablo Valley is going to be around for 10, 15, 20 years, the goal for me would be to look at all the recipients and have it just be all these different incredible organizations over the years that we've been able to contribute to.
Amazing. So, when you look at some of the issues, do you start with some issues in mind, or is it just truly an open platform for whoever comes to you? Or are there certain areas that you think resonate more with your committee or that you're looking for?
So that's a great question. We follow the same model that was set up nationally, which is we don't fund anything that is political because we are an organization made up of all different political beliefs, and we believe in all of that, right? And then we also don't fund anything that is specific in religion because we are also a community of all different faiths. So, for example, if a specific class is required in religion to receive a service, to go to the food bank and get your groceries, but you have to take that class. Those are the kinds of projects that we aren't funding because we aren't here to further either a political or a religious mission. But other than that, we are open. So we have anybody and everyone apply, which is so amazing because it's just, for me, reading the applications really is one of my most favorite parts of the year because you learn so much about this community. You learn about the needs, but we have everything from homelessness to education to job skills to mental health to programs for expansion of programs for food insecurity to people that are living really isolated and can't get out of their homes. So we've just seen such a range of different programs and projects that come across, and I think it would almost limit us if we were to put any more restrictions up there for the types of organizations that we want to help.
So you're wide open, which is
we are wide open.
Okay. And so you mentioned job workforce development and job training and things. Is that Opportunity Junction? Is that where that comes in? So that's one of your newest grantees. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Opportunity Junction is incredible. They have been here they're an incredible organization that has been around forever. And what we loved about them and what really stood out, they were a recipient of our $25,000 community grant this past grant cycle. And they are truly taking people that didn't have the opportunity to get the job training because whether it was a financial issue, they couldn't pay for their schooling, or they were pigeonholed in different ways, and they just couldn't get out of the barriers that they were facing in order to get the job skills and the education they needed to really start building a career for themselves. And that's exactly what Opportunity Junction does. And with this particular community grant, what they wanted to build was a whole new set of job training around being a medical assistant. And they had done a pilot for it. And the pilot was so successful. And especially in Contra Costa County, we are facing a shortage in medical workers. Right. So they're really trying to accomplish two things. They're creating more people that are trained in the medical assistant world to help close that gap of the lack of medical professionals that we have. And then they're taking these incredible people that want to work harder and create a new career path for themselves, and they're actually giving them all of the job skills and training they need to be successful, truly changing their life to build their own, to take that job skill training, and then they can build their own life in the way that they want and be proud of their career. So they're incredible.
They have the potential. They just needed these opportunities, which is why it's a junction. And then you're
filling. And they cover all the costs down to the scrubs and their lunch when they're actually in the classes for training, because these are really rigorous programs. You can't just walk into the medical field, right? You need to have training, very intense training. So they take other things off the table that might prohibit somebody from being able to attend. They feed them lunch. They give them scrubs. They give them school supplies.
So they don't have to have two jobs while they're in training or school.
Correct. Okay. They help them with transportation and getting them onto the site to actually do the training. So the work they're doing is just amazing. They're really changing people's lives.
And what was the third organization this year?
It was the Food Bank of Contra Costa County and Solano. And again, The food bank is incredible. If you've never been there,
No, I actually haven't.
it is the way that another like super smart way that they have built and created their food bank and their facilities. So impressive. They own their building. They are constantly looking for efficiencies so that they can feed more people, because since COVID, since 2020, food insecurity has increased. I think it's doubled in our area. And so they're helping more families than they've ever had to help. And what they actually applied for, because they were our other recipient of our community grant this year, $25,000 community grant, they were looking to build a clean room in their facility. And they actually had the space. But if you're not familiar with a clean room, it would be a room that has a ton of extra kind of sanitary not only like utilities, but the way the room is actually designed and developed inside so that you can do bulk food sorting. It has to be done in a very specific way, and it's a highly regulated room for that reason.
So it's specialized.
It's specialized. It has, it has all the equipment that's needed to keep everything very sanitary, essentially. And the reason that this is important for the food bank is because they want to be able to take these huge pallets of food that they can buy or that gets donated to them and, put them into smaller boxes so that they can essentially distribute them to the families that actually are in need. And in the Bay Area, they would have I believe that they're going to work towards their clean room and continuing to raise the additional funds besides the $25,000 to build it. But they'll be the only one. So they'll be helping out other food banks.
Right.
And when you build a clean room like that, you increase the amount of food. So the quantity of food that they're going to be able to give would increase. And not only that, but the types of food. So they can distribute more fresh vegetables, more poultry, more proteins, grains. They were really looking to continue to provide high quality, nutritious food. And they would be helping food banks all over the Bay Area with this clean room. So I know that they're going to make that happen and become a reality. And the $25,000 grant is certainly a great stepping stone to helping to make that happen.
So just leave us with just some final thoughts about this year's experience or overall your partnership.
I mean, I think Impact Diablo Valley has really been such a gift for me to do, not only with Gina, but to have created this community of generous donors. And then on top of it, to get to know so many of the nonprofit organizations and an organization like Three Valleys Community Foundation, which is something that we wouldn't be able to do our work without the partnership of Three Valleys, right? And so it's just opened up a whole new world and community for me. And it's not just about our members. It really is about establishing relationships with all these incredible nonprofits and all these incredible nonprofit leaders in Contra Costa County. And that has been so rewarding personally, because we really do live in such an incredible and generous community.